I watched my parents' faces turn white as they read the document. I just handed them. My mother's hands trembled. My father couldn't even look at me. After 28 years of putting my sister first, of sacrificing everything I had for her dreams while mine died in the shadows, they finally understood. I wasn't their doormat anymore. And that single piece of paper? It was about to change everything. If you love stories about justice, karma, and people finally standing up for themselves, you're in the right place. Hit that like button right now. And subscribe to True Revenge Tales for more real stories of people who refuse to be walked over. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Now let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Marcus, and I need you to understand something right from the start. I wasn't abused in the traditional sense. I was fed. I had clothes. I had a roof over my head. But there's a special kind of pain that comes from being the child who simply doesn't matter, and that pain, it cuts deeper than any physical wound ever could. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. One that probably looks perfect from the outside, but was slowly killing me on the inside. I was 8 years old when everything changed. 8 years old when I went from being an only child, cherished, loved, the center of my parents' world, to being completely and utterly invisible. The day my sister Vanessa was born was the day I ceased to exist in any meaningful way. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, sibling rivalry is normal. Parents get excited about babies. You were just jealous. And maybe at first that's all it was. But this wasn't normal sibling dynamics. This was something else. Entirely. Something toxic and damaging that would shape the next 20 years of my life. Vanessa wasn't just their daughter. She was their obsession. Every single thing she did was magnificent, groundbreaking, worthy of celebration and documentation. I'm not exaggerating when I say that my parents treated her like she was destined for greatness from the moment she could hold a crayon. Her first scribble, framed, not just stuck on the fridge like a normal kid's. Artwork, professionally, framed and hung in the hallway, like it was a Picasso. When she sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star completely off-key at age 4, my mother cried tears of joy and recorded it, playing it back for every visitor who entered our home. Listen to our little songbird. She'd gush, while guests smiled politely, and I died a little inside. Meanwhile, I was bringing home report cards with straight A's, perfect scores in every subject, and getting a distracted, "That's nice, honey," while my parents fawned over Vanessa's C+. In art class, like she'd just been accepted into the Louvre. I remember the exact moment I realized how deep this went. I was in 6th grade, and I'd made the honor roll for the 4th consecutive semester. I came home excited, clutching my certificate, ready to show my parents. I walked into the living room and found them having a full-blown celebration, balloons, a cake, the works. For a split second, my heart soared. Had they somehow found out about my achievement? Were they finally seeing me? Then I saw the banner. "Congratulations, Vanessa, Dancer of the Month." She was 6 years old and had been named Dancer of the Month at her recreational dance class, a title that literally rotated among all the students, so everyone got it eventually. It meant nothing. But my parents were celebrating like she'd won an Olympic gold medal. I stood there holding my honor roll certificate, watching them take hundreds of photos of Vanessa in her little tutu, and something inside me quietly shattered. "Mom, Dad," I said softly. I made honor roll again. My father glanced over, gave me a thumbs up, and immediately returned his attention to adjusting the lighting for Vanessa's photo shoot. My mother didn't even look up. That's when I learned the most important lesson of my childhood. My achievements meant nothing. My worth was measured only in how little trouble I caused and how much I stayed out of the way of Vanessa's spotlight. But the real kicker? I kept trying. God help me, I kept trying to earn their love. When I was 16, I poured my heart and soul into a science project. I spent 8 months developing a prototype for a low-cost renewable energy solution for underserved communities. I read college-level textbooks. I taught myself advanced physics. I built something genuinely innovative, and it paid off. I won the state-level science competition, beating out seniors when I was just a junior. The prize was a $5,000 scholarship and recognition from the governor himself. The local newspaper wanted to do a story on me. My school was talking about nominating me for national competitions. I was proud. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this would be enough. This would make them see me. The award ceremony was on a Friday evening. My parents came. I'd begged them to. And for the first 30 minutes, I thought this was finally my moment. They watched me accept the award. They heard the governor praise my innovation. They saw the standing ovation. Then my mother's phone buzzed. She looked at it, grabbed my father's arm, and they both stood up. Right there in the middle of the ceremony, with the director of the Science Foundation still speaking. Vanessa's recital starts in 45 minutes. My mother whispered to me, as if that explained everything. "We need to leave now to make it on time. Congratulations, honey. We're very proud." And they left. They left me standing on that stage, watching them walk out, while everyone around me tried to pretend they hadn't noticed. But they had. The governor had. My teachers had. The other parents had. I've never forgotten the look of pity on my science teacher's face when she came up to me afterward. "Marcus," she said gently, "you did something extraordinary today. Don't let anyone make you feel like it's not important." But it was too late. The message had been received, loud and clear, even at my absolute best. I would never be as important as Vanessa at her most mediocre. Want to know the worst part? Vanessa's dance recital that night? She played a tree. A background tree that didn't even have a solo. It was her third recital that month. These things happened constantly. But my once-in-a-lifetime achievement? That could be sacrificed without a second thought. When I got home that night, there was no celebration waiting. No cake, no balloons, no photo shoot. My father was already asleep. My mother was helping Vanessa remove her stage makeup, cooing about how beautiful she'd looked on stage. I took my trophy, this gorgeous crystal and metal award, with my name engraved on it, and I put it on the shelf in my bedroom. It stayed there alone for years. Meanwhile, Vanessa's participation ribbons, literally just ribbons for showing up, had an entire custom-built display case in our living room. Prime real estate, the first thing visitors saw when they entered our home. That's when I made a decision that would define my teenage years. I stopped trying to win their approval. I stopped needing them. I learned to make myself small, to require nothing, to expect even less. I became the easy child, the one who never complained, never asked for help, never caused problems, because I'd learned that problems meant attention, and attention would only come at the cost of Vanessa's spotlight, which was apparently a crime punishable by complete parental withdrawal. I worked 2 part-time jobs from the age of 15. I saved every penny. I built my own life, brick by brick, knowing that when the time came, I'd be on my own. And I was right. Because when college applications came around, when I got accepted to a top-tier engineering program, when I finally needed just one thing from them, $8,000 for housing, just enough to get me through 1 year until my co-op program provided income, they looked me in the eyes and chose Vanessa again. But that's a story for another chapter. What you need to understand about Chapter 1 is this. I wasn't broken by one big traumatic event. I was eroded slowly, over 18 years, by 1,000 tiny moments of being overlooked, undervalued, and treated as less important than my sister. And the cruelest part? They did it all while calling themselves good parents. If Chapter 1 was death by 1,000 cuts, Chapter 2 was the moment someone finally drove the knife straight through my heart, and the hand holding that knife belonged to the 2 people who were supposed to protect me. Let me set the scene for you, because the sheer audacity of what happened still takes my breath away. I'd made it. Against all odds, drowning in student loan debt, working myself to exhaustion, eating nothing but ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. For 4 straight years, I'd made it. I graduated with honors from one of the top engineering programs in the country, and I did it completely alone, because my parents were 3 states away helping Vanessa move into her 3rd apartment in 2 years for another big break that would never come. But here's the thing about surviving trauma. You think you're healed until something reminds you that the wound never really closed. It just scabbed over. My grandmother's death was that reminder. Grandma Helen wasn't just my grandmother. She was my lifeline. She was the only person in my entire family who actually saw me. When everyone else was at Vanessa's events, Grandma Helen would call me and ask about my day. When I won that science competition my parents walked out on, she drove 4 hours to take me to dinner and celebrate. She was the one who slipped me $100 bills with notes that said, "For your dreams, not theirs." Losing her felt like losing the only witness to my childhood, the only person who could validate that. Yes, it really was that bad. Yes, I really was that invisible. The funeral was devastating, but the will reading, that changed everything. I sat in that lawyer's office, numb with grief, barely listening as he droned through legal jargon. Then I heard my name, to my grandson Marcus, who built himself from nothing while others were given everything. I leave my entire estate. Time stopped. My grandmother's house, $400,000. Her savings, $200,000. Her investments, $150,000. $750,000. To me, only me. I looked down at the personal letter she'd left, and I couldn't stop the tears. She'd written, "I'm sorry I didn't do more while I was alive. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder against your parents' blindness. You deserved better. You always deserved better. This is my way of giving you the freedom they never did. Build the life you dream of, my beautiful boy. Make yourself proud." I was sobbing, ugly crying in front of the lawyer, clutching this letter like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to earth. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. Someone had seen my worth and decided I deserved everything. Then I looked up and saw my parents' faces. My mother had gone sheet white, her mouth hanging open in shock. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. And Vanessa? She was staring at me with this expression of pure, undiluted outrage, like I'd personally stolen something from her. That should have been my first warning. The call started the next day. Tentative at first. "Just checking in on you, honey." Such a shock about the will, wasn't it? My mother's voice was sickly sweet, dripping with fake concern. I knew what was coming, but some naive part of me still hoped I was wrong. 3 weeks later, they invited me to dinner. Let me repeat that. My parents, who hadn't invited me to a family dinner in years, who'd never once driven to my city to see my home, who'd missed every birthday, every promotion, every milestone, they suddenly wanted to have dinner with me. I should have said no. I should have known it was a trap. But that broken little 8-year-old, inside me, the one who'd been invisible for 20 years, he still wanted to. Believe that maybe they'd changed. Maybe Grandma's death had made them realize what they'd lost. Maybe they finally wanted a relationship with me. I was such a fool. The dinner was at their house, in that same dining room where I'd been ignored 1,000 times before. Vanessa wasn't there, first red flag. They'd never excluded their precious golden child from anything. My parents were weird, too attentive, too interested. My father asked about my job, something he'd never done in 5 years of me working there. My mother complimented my appearance. They were like actors who'd studied how normal parents behave but couldn't quite nail the performance. I felt sick to my stomach before we even got to the main course. Then my father cleared his throat. That particular throat clear that I'd learned meant we need something from you, and my whole body tensed. "Son, we want to talk about your inheritance." 5 words. 5 words that confirmed my worst fears and shattered the last tiny piece of hope I'd been clinging to. They didn't want to know how I was doing. They didn't want to rebuild our relationship. They didn't want me. They wanted my money. My mother launched into this rehearsed speech about how happy they were for me, how Grandma had been so generous, and then, with the audacity of someone who'd spent $687,000 on one child and $23,000 on the other, she said it. "We think you should split the inheritance with Vanessa. 50-50. It's only fair." Fair. That word, coming from her mouth after everything they'd done. After every missed event, every dismissed achievement, every time they'd chosen Vanessa over me without a second thought. I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh, a broken, bitter sound that I didn't even recognize as coming from me. "Fair?" I repeated. "You want to talk to me about fair?" And that's when the real manipulation started. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Those practiced, weaponized tears she'd used on me my whole life. "Marcus, please, don't be selfish. Vanessa is your sister. She's struggling. She doesn't have the advantages you've had." "Advantages?" I exploded. "What advantages? The advantage of paying for my own education? The advantage of working 40 hours a week while taking a full course load? The advantage of graduating $45,000 in debt while you paid for her luxury arts academy?" "Don't be dramatic," my father snapped. And there it was, the real him, the one who'd been hiding under the fake nice dinner conversation. My mother pressed on, explaining how Vanessa needed the money to start a life coaching business. A life coaching business. This woman, who was 30 years old, living in her parents' basement, who'd never held a job for more than 6 months, who'd failed at every single venture they'd bankrolled, was going to coach other people on how to live their lives. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic, but here's where it got really ugly. When I refused, when I told them that Grandma had left that money to me, specifically to me for a reason, my father's face went cold. "If you don't share this inheritance," he said, voice low and threatening. "You'll prove that we were right about you all along. That you are selfish. That you don't care about family. Let that sink in. After 30 years of neglect, of favoritism, of making me feel worthless, they were now threatening to paint me as the villain for keeping an inheritance that was legally and morally mine." My mother nodded along, tears streaming. "Please, Marcus, don't let money destroy this family." And there it was, the ultimate manipulation. Somehow I was the one destroying the family, not them, with their decades of blatant favoritism, not them with their lawsuit-level entitlement to money that wasn't theirs, me, for daring to keep what was given to me. "I'm not giving her a penny," I said quietly. "Then you're no son of ours," my father replied. Those words should have destroyed me. Years ago, they would have. But standing there in that dining room, looking at these two strangers who'd never really been parents to me, I felt nothing but cold, clear certainty. "Fine," I said. "I'll see myself out." I made it to my car before my mother chased me down. Begging, pleading, guilt-tripping, all the greatest hits. And that's when I said the words that would change everything. "You're about to learn exactly what kind of son you raised." 2 months later, I was served with a lawsuit. They were suing me for the inheritance, claiming I'd manipulated an elderly woman, that the money should have gone to my father, that I was legally obligated to share it. All lies, vicious, documented lies. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. Again, they thought I'd crumble. They thought I'd settle just to make the problem go away. They were wrong. Because while they'd been coddling Vanessa and teaching her that the world owed her everything, life had been teaching me how to fight, and I was about to show them exactly what I'd learned. They wanted war, so I gave them a war they could never win. Let me tell you something about people who've spent their entire lives being handed everything. They have no idea how to fight someone who's had to claw for every single thing they've ever earned. My parents thought they could intimidate me with a lawsuit. They thought I'd panic, settle, hand over half of Grandma's money just to make the nightmare stop. They forgot who they were dealing with. See, while they were busy creating a spoiled, entitled princess who couldn't survive a week in the real world, they were also accidentally forging me into something far more dangerous. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. I hired the best estate attorney in the state, and yes, it cost me a fortune. But this wasn't about money anymore. This was about dignity. This was about justice. This was about making sure that for once in my life, I wasn't the one who got sacrificed on the altar of Vanessa's needs. My lawyer, Catherine, was a shark in a designer suit. The first time we met, she read through the lawsuit my parents had filed and actually laughed. "This is one of the most baseless cases I've seen in 20 years, she said. "They're claiming elder abuse and manipulation, but your grandmother's will was drafted 5 years before her death when she was in perfect health. We have medical records. We have witnesses. We have her own words in multiple letters explaining her decision. So we'll win," I asked. "Oh, we'll do better than win," Catherine smiled. "Discovery is going to be very, very interesting." She was right. Discovery, for those who don't know, is the legal process where both sides have to hand over relevant documents and evidence. My parents thought this would hurt me. They thought digging into my relationship with Grandma would expose some wrongdoing. Instead, it exposed them. Catherine's forensic accountant went through 30 years of my parents' financial records with a fine-tooth comb, and what she found was absolutely devastating. The second mortgage they'd taken out 8 years ago, the one they claimed was for home renovations and retirement planning, that was the first crack in their facade. $150,000 borrowed against their house. And where did it go? $85,000 to Vanessa's Arts Academy, on top of the $240,000 they'd already spent on her tuition. $30,000 to Vanessa's business ventures. 3 failed boutiques and an online jewelry store that never sold a single piece. $20,000 to Vanessa's car, apartment deposits, and credit card debts that she'd racked up and couldn't pay. $15,000 to renovate their basement into a luxury apartment for Vanessa to live in rent-free. They were drowning in debt, completely underwater, and every single dollar had been sacrificed to the church of Vanessa. But then Catherine found something that made my blood run cold. Grandma. Helen had been giving my parents $2,000 a month for 15 years. She thought she was helping the whole family, helping me get through school, helping us all stay afloat. That's $360,000 over 15 years. I never saw a penny of it. Not one single penny. But wait, it gets worse. Catherine subpoenaed their emails, and that's where we found the smoking gun. Grandma had been asking about me, repeatedly. "How's Marcus doing? Does Marcus need help with school? I'd love to send him some money for his apartment. And my parents had blocked her. Every single time. Marcus is doing great. He doesn't need anything. Marcus is too busy with his career to visit, but he's fine. Marcus has his life under control. You should focus on helping us with Vanessa. They had actively prevented my grandmother from helping me while funneling her money to my sister. When I read those emails in Catherine's office, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I actually felt physical pain in my chest. "Are you okay?" Catherine asked gently. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." The lawsuit was dismissed 4 months later. The judge didn't just rule in my favor. He was angry. He admonished my parents' attorney for wasting the court's time with such a frivolous case and came very close to sanctioning them for filing a baseless lawsuit. My parents were ordered to pay my legal fees, $47,000. I watched them leave that courtroom looking 10 years older, broken and defeated, and I felt absolutely nothing. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because Catherine had given me something more valuable than a legal victory. She'd given me documentation, proof, evidence of everything they'd done to me. For 3 decades, I could have walked away then. I'd won. I'd kept my inheritance. I'd proven them wrong. But winning wasn't enough anymore. I wanted accountability. I scheduled a meeting, neutral ground, Catherine's conference room. My parents on one side of the table, me on the other, with a wall of evidence between us. They looked terrible. My father had aged a decade in 6 months. My mother's hands shook as she clutched her purse. The lawsuit had destroyed them. Financially, they'd had to borrow from friends to pay my legal fees, maxed out every credit card, and were facing potential foreclosure. Good. Let them feel what drowning feels like. I'd been drowning for 30 years while they watched. Catherine slid the first folder across the table. "Open it," I said calmly. My mother's hands trembled as she pulled out the financial breakdown. 30 years of receipts, statements, and expenses sorted into 2 neat columns. Money spent on Vanessa, $687,000. Money spent on Marcus, $23,000. The number was even worse than I'd calculated on my own. A 30-to-1 ratio. $30 for Vanessa for every $1 for me. I hired a forensic accountant, I explained, my voice steady as ice. These numbers are based on your bank records, tax returns, credit card statements. And this doesn't include the intangible costs, the time, the attention, the love you gave her and withheld from me. My mother was crying, but I wasn't done. The second folder contained Grandma Helen's financial contributions and the emails where they'd lied to her about me. My father's face went from gray to crimson. "You have no right." "I have every right. You sued me, remember? Discovery goes both ways." Then I slid over the third document, the one I'd been saving. "This is a bill," I said, "for emotional damages and the financial support I should have received but was denied." I had 3 different therapists review my case and calculate the long-term impact of childhood emotional neglect. The number we arrived at is $400,000. "You can't be serious," my father whispered. "Dead serious. But here's the thing. I'm willing to forgive that entire debt." Hope flickered in my mother's eyes. "Really?" "On one condition." I pulled out the final document, the contract that would change everything. "This is a family agreement. You will both sign it along with Vanessa. Here are the terms. First, you will write a letter to every member of our extended family acknowledging the financial discrepancy and apologizing for the favoritism. Public accountability. Second, 1 year of family therapy, which I'll pay for, non-negotiable. Third, Vanessa will repay me $50,000 of the money you spent on her, $500 per month for 8 years. Miss a single payment and the full amount becomes due immediately. Fourth, you will never ask me for money again. Ever. You will never suggest I help Vanessa financially, house her, employ her, or support her in any way. Fifth, every major holiday gets split equally. Christmas morning with Vanessa, Christmas evening with me, no exceptions. This is insane. My mother gasped. "No, Mom, this is fair. This is what fair actually looks like. These are the boundaries you should have taught me growing up." My father's voice was hollow. "And if we don't sign?" I leaned forward, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. "Then I go public with everything. Every document, every email, every receipt. I post the full financial breakdown on social media. I make sure everyone, your friends, Your church, your neighbors, every single person in your social circle knows exactly what kind of parents you were. You tried to destroy my reputation in court by claiming, I abused Grandma Helen. Turnabout is fair play. You wouldn't, my mother breathed. Try me. The silence in that room was absolutely deafening. Finally, my father spoke. And if we sign, what then? Then we try. We attempt to build something that resembles a functional family relationship. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in justice, in being treated like I actually matter, like I'm your son, not just Vanessa's brother. I stood up and grabbed my coat. You have 48 hours to decide. Sign and follow the terms, or I go scorched earth. Your choice. As I walked out of that conference room, I felt something I hadn't felt in 30 years. Power. They signed 36 hours later. All three of them. And that single piece of paper, that contract, became the foundation of something I never thought possible. A relationship where I actually mattered. It wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. And it was beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this story of standing up against years of unfair treatment. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to True Revenge. Tales for more stories about justice, boundaries, and people who refuse to be doormats. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Marcus's situation. Would you have signed the contract or demanded more? Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Until next time, stay strong.